In this video, we're going to go over the various electronic igniters that we sell here at canonfuse.com. We'll take a look at the Talon igniters. These have been around for a very long time. They connect to the fuse outside the cake and work very well. You can use them for your chain fuses. You can use them for anywhere you've got a fuse that you want to set off. You can use them as a backup system within your show. They can just use for any time you want to ignite a fuse somewhere. But we're also going to look at these Firewire initiators. These work a little bit differently. You either remove the fuse from the cake, or in the instance of this cake, it has a direct fire port. You hook them up there for an instantaneous ignition. So if you've got different parts of your show where you've got a special cake or something you want to go off instantly and you want to know when it's going to go off, this is the one to use. Today we're also going to just use the cheap wireless remote system. You can pick these things up for 10, 15 bucks. They're very cheap. They can be found anywhere, but I'm using that just to show you you don't need a $1,000 Cobra system to do what you need these things to do. The cake we're going to look at is from Spirit of 76. We're using it because it has both a fuse and a direct fire port on it. I just want to use that to show you the differences in some of these semi-professional cakes. You can still buy this cake anywhere. You can buy it directly from Spirit of 76 or one of their vendors. It's not a non-regulated cake. As always, we want to make sure we've got our safety equipment handy, have some tape handy to be able to secure the igniters to the firework, and then some fuse cutters just in case you want to trim those fuses up. So with that, let's get started with the Talon igniters, and I'll show you how those work. These igniters are made up of a nickel wire, two wires. They tie into a small filament in the head here. This head has got a little elastic band around it, which helps to secure it around the fuse, and it's got a little notch exactly where the fuse goes. To see that little filament in there, we'll take a look, zoomed in. And that little filament needs to wrap around the fuse. It needs a really good contact with the outside of the fuse. And so we'll pan over to the fuse itself, and it hooks on simply by lining that fuse up with the groove in the igniter, letting it clamp down, and then coming around to the other side and pinching that tight. And what that's going to do is it's going to wrap that little filament right around that fuse. You want to attach this as close to the cake as possible, because you got to remember it's igniting this fuse, and there's going to be a few second delay between the time that this fuse gets lit and by the time it gets into your first firework. And at this point, you want to trim off the excess fuse after you've got it clamped on there. And then it is always a good practice to take a little bit of duct tape, secure this where you want it, right up tight to the cake, and then cover all of it over with that duct tape. And this makes sure that while you're moving it around or setting up your show, that you're not going to pull that initiator igniter off of the cake itself. So from there, this cake is ready to put into the display where you want it, and then once you have it set up, the last thing you'll do is unspool the wire and connect it to your remote ignition system. From here, let's take a look at how the Firewire initiators hook up. Next, we're going to look at the initiators from MJG. These are called a Firewire initiator. I believe they call them that to help differentiate them from the ATF regulated igniters that you would see or use in professional displays. And these are very similar, yes, but they are a little different. The composition on the end of this is a safer compound that is not regulated. It's able to be shipped through the mail with fuse and anything else you might want to order from canonfuse.com. but they still work in the same way. When the electricity transfers through this, it will explode this tiny little bit of composition, and that will light whatever is in the immediate vicinity of it. Now they have a little shield on here, and it's been seen by others to use a fuse as a fuse igniter. And what they do is they'll angle cut the fuse. They'll place that directly over top of the pyrogen on the end, and then slide this boot up over it. Now it's very hard to see if you've got it exactly right or not, but the problem has been is that we've just not gotten 100% ignition this way. Many times that these igniters have gone off and they just will not light the fuse. So I do not suggest this. If you're going to use something to light fuses, I would really suggest going with a Talon igniter and avoiding the MJG initiators. So what they are designed for is for going directly into a cake. And there are several cakes coming out in the market now that, they're semi-professional, they would like to say. They are still 1.4 commercial cakes that anybody can possess. You don't have to have a license to do it or anything like that. But they're set up more like professional grade cakes. They have, a lot of them will have a fire port on them as they refer to them, and this is just a small port that directly goes into the cake. This one goes into some quick match that goes down directly into the cake and ignites it from there. And you simply just take the end of it and force it down into the fire port, and then bend it over and secure it with a piece of tape. That quick, that simple. When this thing is detonated, it will immediately detonate the cake. We like to use these for choreographed shows, pyro musicals, things like that, where you have a really tight need for a tight tolerance in your display. Another way of doing it is to simply take and remove the fuse and then place the initiator into the fuse hole. What you need to do that, sometimes you need to remove enough area around the fuse to see where that fuse is going to go, and to see where it's going to come in contact with perhaps the lift charge on the very first part of the cake. You need to get it in there where it's able to do that. I can't recommend doing that. Many people do it that way. I just look for cakes such as this that feature a fire port, a direct fire port on them. A lot of the other big brands are coming out with those fire ports on their cakes as well. So with that, let's take these things outside, hook them up to our firing system, and shoot them off. All right, we're out in the field now. We're going to show you how you hook these initiators and igniters up to a firing system, and then I'll demonstrate each one of them for you so you can kind of see without them hooked into the firework exactly what they do when they go off, and a little bit of best practices with those things. So first, each initiator or igniter has two wires, two nickel-chrome wires that go up to the heads of them. And now there's not a positive or negative with these. They can go in either port. So you just pull back your electrical port and close it, and then you snap it back shut so that it holds it firmly, and then you place the other into the other side. And again, it doesn't matter which way. You can't wire these things backwards or screw it up. Just make sure that they're not going to touch. That's very important. We're going to do the same thing with our Talon igniter. We're doing this with our firing system off. Make sure that you are not live when you're hooking up your wires. And so first we will show and demonstrate the Firewire initiator. We're going to turn on our remote, and then we're going to turn on our firing system. And if you watch closely, you're going to see just a small flash and spark from this as I depress the button. And that is enough to light quick match or you know, the lift charge in the first part of the cake, but it needs to be in there right into the powder. On this is lights quite differently. It doesn't tend to explode as the MJG does. It more heats up and needs to burn through the fuse in order to work. So where I just touched the button on the Firewire and ignited that, whenever I'm lighting and setting off a Talon, I like to press and hold the button. And it will send a pulse through there to be able to burn through it. Now, if you just touch the button once lightly, it may not give it enough electricity to set that off. Now, if you're using a more advanced system such as a Cobra, it's going to set them off. There's a lot more juice, and it's timed a lot better to fire Talon igniters. So with that, we'll hook this system up to our cakes and set off some fireworks. All right, we have our firing system hooked up to our cakes. We have the Talon on the right and the Firewire on the left there. And we backed ourselves off quite a safe distance from where we're at. And that's why you use a firing system, is to be able to be back and safe and still be able to light off your show. So here we go. We're going to set off the Talon first. You're going to see just a short delay before it takes off, and these are just finale cakes. They're going to last a whole 5 seconds and, you know, throw a whole lot of fireworks up in the air at once. But go big or go home. Here we go. 3, 2, 1, press. There's So you could see with that one that there was a pretty good delay as it fired off the fuse, and then the fuse had to burn its way into the cake. Now, here we go with the Firewire. 3, 2, 1. As you can see, that was almost instantaneous from the time I pushed the button to when it was throwing fireworks into the air. It's a lot better for a choreographed show or that sort of thing. But if you're hooking these things to fuses or sections of your show or things like that, go with the Talons. They work great for lighting off fuses. And mortar racks, they work very well for lighting off mortar racks as well, because you've got all of that fused together. So with that, we thank you for hanging out.